everybody, Matt here from Matt's Movies, Music and More, welcoming you to my channel and a new segment that we're going to be doing here, hopefully as often as I can, and it's a segment called What Did You Think? This is where we will be talking about movies picked at random by a unique idea that we have, which will be revealed at the end of the episode. And to help me review the films that we will be talking about, I will have a special guest. So I will be welcoming my special guest now, a guy I've known for many years who loves his movies just as much as I. Welcome, Andrew.
Howdy.
And so the movie we've agreed to talk about for the first video, because we couldn't do a random one for it, is the 2006 movie Hot Fuzz, directed by Edgar Wright and starring Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, Timothy Dalton, Paddy Considine, Olivia Colman and Jim Broadbent. Now, the first thing we're going to do as our little disclaimer for this video is I'm going to ask Andrew, and then I'll reveal my own in a minute, is had you seen this movie before we decided to talk about it? And if so, when was the last time you saw it?
I saw it when it originally came out in cinemas. This would have been the second year of my bachelor's degree, and I do distinctly remember asking a girl that I liked, who was worked with me on the degree, if she wanted to come out with me and see Hot Fuzz, because, you know, second movie in the Simon Pegg Edgar Wright canon, or the three Cornetto trilogy that I'm sure you'll mention. So it was anticipated by a lot of people, including myself. So she wanted to see Hot Fuzz, or I think Spider-Man 3 was still in cinemas at the time. This is how long ago it was. She said no to both. So
what great memories that is.
It is strangely, that is my primal memory of that movie, or at least before seeing that movie.
So you went and saw it in the movies back in the day it came out?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I actually saw it on DVD. I bought it the day it came out back in 2006, and I think it was on offer in the supermarkets really cheap, so I bought it straight away because I'd already seen Shaun of the Dead at the cinema, and actually went and saw that movie 3 times. Hot Fuzz was the only one of the Cornetto trilogy that I actually hadn't watched in the cinema, because I saw The World's End the day it came out as well. But Hot Fuzz, wow. We might as well give the facts of the movie, yes. Which is that the movie itself, well, I'll give you the plot, which is from what I've got on the internet. So the plot itself is PC Nicholas Angel is an overachieving officer of the London Metropolitan Police Service. His jealous colleagues arrange for him to be promoted to work as a sergeant in the village of Sandford, Gloucestershire. Sandford is a crime-free idol, a regular winner of Village of the Year award, and is watched over by the Neighbourhood Watch Alliance, the NWA, which is actually a link to the US rap band Niggers with Attitude, with Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and all that. Hence why that's their little nod there. Angel is frustrated to find that the local police service is lazy and complacent. His new partner is PC Danny Butterman, a fan of action and buddy cop movies, and son of Inspector Frank Butterman. After the local performance of Romeo and Juliet, the 2 lead actors are murdered off-stage by a cloaked figure who disguises it as an accident. Angel is the only officer who suspects foul play. When sent to resolve a neighbourhood dispute, Angel discovers a slash of illegal weapons, including an old naval mine, and Angel locks them into the police station's evidence room. Angel and Danny help George Merchant, a wealthy drunkard and land developer, when he returns home from the pub. Angel slowly warms to Danny, and they watch action movies at Danny's home. And that night, Merchant is killed in a gas explosion that destroys his mansion. Already, I've given away probably half the movie already. But basically, the way that Hot Fuzz is it's kind of like a murder whodunit in a way. A bit like the Agatha Christie movie 10 Little Indians, I'd probably say a little bit.
That's what it ultimately becomes, yes.
Yeah, because I think it's
after
quite
initially
clever,
establishing itself as a action movie, or at least the parody, the pastiche of a American action cop buddy movie that just happens to have the quintessential small town Englishness put in there for comic effect, or juxtapose this genre and this setting juxtaposed against each other.
Because it looks like, in a way, that this movie kind of borrows heavily from not only like 10 Little Indians, but also The Wicker Man, in which Edward Woodward is actually in this movie as well.
That is quite ironic, yes.
And also you've got a real who's who of great British talent besides the main characters, like Timothy Dalton obviously being a James Bond, which is, it's a big deal for that movie to have him.
Yeah.
But you've got people like, I always forget the guy's name, but he was the guy that plays the Doctor in Hot Fuzz, and he is the guy that was in Lethal Weapon 3, if I recall.
Oh.
He, I forget his name. I'm going to have to double check it just because it will wind me up if I don't know. His name is Stuart Wilson. You'll have seen him in Lethal Weapon 3 and The Rock and quite a few other British, American movies, but he's a British actor. And you've obviously got, as I said, Edward Woodward, Billy Whitelaw, and you've also got Kenneth Cranham as well, who I quite like, and people like in the actual police force, where you've got Paddy Considine, and you've got Rafe Spall, who's actually in all three of the Cornetto movies, if I recall.
Yes.
And Kevin Eldon, who I like a lot as well, who worked with Simon Pegg on Big Train, and Olivia Colman, who's obviously gone on to bigger and better things with Broadchurch and The Night Manager. And obviously you've got Bill Bailey as well, who plays a dual role as two twins, completely opposites to each other.
That was a good joke, yes.
I quite like that a lot as well. And obviously there's some links to Spaced, which is sadly no Jessica Stevenson or Jessica Hines, but you have Julia Deakin appearing in this film again, just like she'd done in Shaun of the Dead, in which she plays a barmaid, in which she constantly makes this joke about, the newspaper got my age wrong, they put me down as 55, but in fact I'm 53.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the constant running gag, and then obviously you've got many other gags that are going on in this film. But I think what we need to get down to is really, what was your opinion of Hot Fuzz compared to Shaun of the Dead?
It could have easily fallen into the difficult second album critique that it's inferior to Shaun of the Dead, and you do raise a good point as to whether Shaun of the Dead is better simply because it was the first one, it came out first, so maybe the entertainment and novelty value is there compared to the second one. But right now I feel like I can't separate the two in my head, and by that I mean I think they're equally good, or at least in my opinion.
I think the issue you've got there though is the fact that they are two completely different movies that happen to share many of the same actors, because obviously Shaun of the Dead is a zom comedy, rom-zom, which is comedy, horror and sort of romance, whereas Hot Fuzz is really this sort of action buddy cop type movie, but with like village community really.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ripping off a bit of the idea of, like, I suppose, the Lethal Weapon, the Bad Boys, the movies that they're talking about, Point Break and all that.
It's got all the tropes in there, like the cop who doesn't get on with his fellow cop friends. It's his fellow officers, and how he's, by the book, he's got this rigid mentality that has to change and develop over the course of the movie, and the businessman who's clearly the bad guy, but they can't touch him initially, but then they can, and it all leads to a big fight at the end, and don't do anything or I'll kill your friend kind of tension stakes, but obviously to exaggerated comic effect. It just so happens to have a creepy village conspiracy, like you say, Wicker Man. The cop coming to this small island or rural community, discovering this pagan cult, or in this case the NWA, that wants to preserve the old world, the old ways, and by the old world, their ways, in this case it's they want to win the Village of the Year competition to such a psychotic degree.
But they think that the key thing is the greater good.
The greater good.
Which they often keep on referring in this film. But what's interesting is that in this movie as well, you've also got playing small little bit parts, actually, famous people such as Cate Blanchett, who you wouldn't recognise because she's wearing a mask over her face as like a crime scene forensic investigator. And you also have Peter Jackson, who I believe is the Santa Claus that stabs Simon Pegg in the hand, hence why when the policeman, played by Steve Coogan, Martin Freeman and Bill Nighy, all go on about the hand, they're like, how's the hand? It's because it was stabbed by the Santa Claus that stabbed him. But again, pointing that out, Martin Freeman and Bill Nighy also in all three of the Cornetto movies.
Yes.
And I love one of my favourite lines in the movie, which I actually mentioned to someone the other day. I still think it's one of the funniest lines in the film. Is at the beginning of the movie, in which the Bill Nighy character has been told to come down because he's not taking this lightly about the fact that he's going to have to go to a different area and be a policeman. And he says to the Bill Nighy character, he goes, "With respect, sir, you can't just make people disappear." And Bill Nighy goes, "Yes, I can. I'm the chief inspector." And I just think that's a hilarious line. And it really shows, doesn't it, that this is going to be a really fun movie.
Yeah, it sets out the quality of its humour and the type of humour right off the gate, the whole repetition. But the repetition of lines, "How's your hand? It's a bit stiff. Hi, how's your hand? It's a bit stiff." And that's the thing with Simon Pegg. We'd already got a perception of him in our heads from Spaced and Shaun of the Dead as this sort of likeable everyman character. And yet the thing that surprised me when I saw this now and when I originally saw it is that he's this steely-faced, by-the-book, uncompromising, dramatic policeman. He's the straight man essentially, and he pretty much carries that performance throughout the whole movie, and it helps to juxtapose against the rural community that's the relaxed, happy, cheerful rural community around him. He's like that, and it helps emphasise the silliness. And he delivers the way he delivers the lines.
It's like when you watch this movie, you can see how much Simon Pegg has grown as an actor, because obviously in his early work with like Space, Big Train, and a couple of other things he'd done, he obviously had worked really hard to play this role. I know he got into extreme physical, really good shape because he'd actually gone out training with the police to try and get into this role. So he really worked hard to do this, and you can see in his steely-eyed face that he is really playing this really serious. He's trying hard not to laugh, and he's doing a really good job. Nick Frost especially, you can see a lot of sympathy with his character compared to the Ed character, who is kind of like the I suppose the couch potato that you love in Shaun of the Dead, whereas in Hot Fuzz he's kind of the sweet and innocent police guy who kind of gets the mickey taken out of him throughout the movie by the other people that work in the police force, but obviously they can't rip into him too much because his dad happens to be the inspector.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's interesting to see that. And then obviously one thing I would like to talk about in this film, which I just think is probably one of the best things about the movie, is the performance of Timothy Dalton. I just think he's amazing in this film. He's just so funny because there's constantly puns throughout this whole movie about him being a killer. Like he's going like at the beginning, the first time you hear him say anything, he's like, "Lock me up, I'm a slasher." And he's like, "I'm sorry, I'm a slasher of prices." Yeah. So it's just really, really bizarre because he's like the manager of this local Summerfield. So in the job, he's obviously very, very serious about his work, but at the same time, he likes to joke about everything. And then the songs themselves also give little clues in the soundtrack. Like there's a scene in which the Romeo and Juliet lead actors, which are played by Lucy Punch and David Frill, and I know I've already said spoilers in this anyways, but they're decapitated, and as Simon Skinner is driving through the village, he's found out what the accident is. He kind of gives little clues, and on his radio you've got this bit where it's the Romeo and Juliet song playing by Dire Straits, so you've got that playing, which is hilarious, and then later on you've got another line in which there's a fire that blows up George Merchant's house, and basically they play the song Fire by The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, so you hear fire to destroy all you've got, so you've got that to give you a little bit of a clue there. But I think Hot Fuzz is the best one. No offence to the other two movies in the franchise, but Hot Fuzz is my favourite because I've seen it so many times and I spot little things all the time, and I kind of think if you have a movie like that, then it gives you more enjoyment, whereas a movie like The Sixth Sense or something like that is what I would call a must-see twice movie, because once you've seen it the second time you're like, okay, there it is. So then you don't really need to bother with it again. But Hot Fuzz, you can spot little jokes, little hidden Easter eggs kind of things they put in the movie and stuff. And, you know, I just think it's a really enjoyable movie.
I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there as in terms of what really needs to be said about this. Certainly watching this again, first time in a decade, I was struck by how intertextual and how many things there are going on in terms of the visual references, in terms of the quality and the consistency of the jokes, and everything there. The DVDs that are referenced and looked at, the commentary on action movie conventions, like did you say something as you threw him into the freezer and stuff like that. This is definitely one of those movies that's been made in a generation, or made to be seen and watched on DVD or Blu-ray multiple times, so you'll always discover something new. Either you'll see a new reference or little quality in the scene itself, or you'll hear something.
I always thought it was quite interesting when you had that scene where there was the bargain DVD bucket, yes, in which he's looking at the Chuck Norris movie Silent Rage, and I think he's also looking at Super Cop, which is a Jackie Chan movie. But when he throws the DVD back in, unless you pause it, you won't see it. But there is a copy of Shaun of the Dead in there. But I believe it might be a Spanish release. I'm not 100% sure, but it's not an English release because it says Zombies something on it. But I thought that was quite funny, and yeah, I mean, I just think it's one of those classic movies, and I think it's their best one by far. As a double act of Pegg and Frost, I think it's their best.
Yeah. I'd have to reevaluate the trilogy as a whole, but certainly after...
And Paul as well, of course.
This experience, well, does that really count?
Well, it's got the men in it, so, you know.
It has the people in it, so I suppose we have to count it in the same bracket, yeah. I have to probably think about the trilogy as a whole, but certainly after today's experience, I give Hot Fuzz a lot more credit. It's gone up, in my estimation.
Yeah. Well, I suppose, you know, its box office really helped, with Shaun of the Dead being an international hit, that Hot Fuzz was always going to get the attention from international, and I'm not sure if it was the most profitable in the franchise, but I think it's got to be the most profitable one, because it opened to an even wider audience, because Shaun of the Dead, I'm guessing, didn't open in every country, but yeah. So I suppose that's our opinion on Shaun of the Dead.
Yes,
so,
it is.
I'm glad you enjoyed watching it again after all these years.
And Hot Fuzz.
Yes, and Hot Fuzz. Hence what I screwed up, and this is Hot Fuzz we're talking about.
It's all right.
So yeah, so Hot Fuzz, great movie, and yeah. So what's that sound? Ah, it's that time now, isn't it? Our secret gimmick. We forgot to review that, didn't we? We have a gimmick. We do. We have a gimmick.
We have a gimmick.
Yep, and the gimmick is we have a unique way of picking our movie for the next episode, but unfortunately, due to budgetary reasons, we don't actually have a physical wheel in place. So we will refer to you an app which I had to download, and I designed this, but we have a spinning wheel which I call the Twister Spinner, because I was inspired by the game Twister to come up with this. And on this wheel, it has a bunch of different categories. So in fact, it actually has categories such as action, comedy, drama, family, horror, Matt's picks, sci-fi, superhero, thriller, and WTF, my personal favourite. There are two other categories which you'll see at the bottom. One of them, sadly, is not in play at the moment, and that is for Patreon. If we're lucky enough to get Patreon subscribers who are willing to back us and pledge on our videos, then maybe you can suggest a movie that we could possibly talk about once the wheel lands on it. And then at the bottom, of course, the generic spin again. So, we were going to find out what movie we're going to watch next. So, without further ado, let's spin the wheel. What an interesting start. It's landed on WTF, and according to the board, it means we'll be talking about the 1983 movie Extro, a former video nasty. How do you feel about that?
I am intrigued for my own reasons.
I kind of think that that makes two of us on that one. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I hope that we ourselves, for a first time we've ever done this, I hope you guys enjoyed as much of a fun trip about Hot Fuzz, you know, as remembering it back in the day.
Yeah.
And I hope that we both did a good job on this. So thank you again, Andrew.
You're very welcome.
And we'll see you guys on the next one. All the best.